Run the planning board meeting to order. Start with a roll call, please.
Tom McGinn.
James Lowry.
Tom Coon.
John Rickman.
Roger Moran.
Mike A.
Matt Redwood Planner.
Ann Carter, Board Secretary.
Okay, on the agenda tonight, on the old business, we have one steel recycling, conditional use application. Gary's Auto Salvage, conditional use. Item 3 is zoning amendments, zoning map change, discussion with action. But before we get everything going, we want to do the approval of minutes of December 12th. Everybody had a chance to read them? Any comments, questions?
Move to accept as written.
All in favor? Opposed? So
I
moved.
wouldn't.
Okay, first thing on old business, item 2 is one steel recycling conditional use application. Thad, why don't you lead us off?
The applicant has informed us that because they're going to be doing some surveying and some of the site to provide a more accurate picture of what's existing out there per the board's request. They are not completed with that yet. I've talked to the surveyor, I've talked to the applicant and the surveyor, and we're lined up on how to do that and what to do in accordance with what the board outlined in terms of waivers at the last meeting, what was necessary and what wasn't. However, they haven't been able to get that done at this particular time. So they have no submission to give us tonight. However, given that you did do a sidewalk, albeit an incomplete sidewalk, or let's put it this way, not a legal meeting sidewalk, we thought it was an opportunity, as usually does occur after sidewalk, to discuss what was found and if there were any additional items that the board wants the applicant to put on that site plan. This is the opportunity moment to do that. So the applicants come up from New Hampshire to entertain whatever additional information or findings that the board has found out on the site and communicate that to his consultant so that they can get a complete application on the investor.
Okay, the one thing we did notice on the sidewalk is that there's a second retention pond that was not indicated on the plan. That one was,
Who did it?
myself, Jamie, and Rich. The other thing is the landscaping buffer in front seems to be black. Aside from that, it's pretty much just sort of different from previous sidewalks.
So is there any other?
Do we need to formally act as the board to, since we had a sidewalk, but there wasn't a form there, do we need to waive the requirement for a sidewalk, or can we proceed without one?
You can always, a sidewalk is always optional.
Okay. All right. I just was wanting to, if we needed to do that, get it out of the way, all right? Suggest we get it out of the way.
Just verify that.
And then we can discuss.
Just verify that. Because I say that right off the top of my head. The site plan
I've
regs
had the
that
option.
this being a conditional use, the site plan is not required, but the conditional use, let's just check. I believe it's optional. Sidewalk is optional.
Okay.
It's just been board policy to do it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking if we needed to take some action to get that off the table, we do it right off the bat.
Well, I think it would be a good idea to refer to the members who were at the unofficial sidewalk to guide the board as to whether the full sidewalk is wanted.
I personally don't think it's necessary.
No, I don't think it's necessary. For us to reconvene out there.
Okay, well, the board had elected to do a sidewalk, so I think we need to, at this point, make a motion to waive it if that's how the board feels.
I'll make that plan.
And then defer to the information that we have for the members who were there.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, all in favor?
Who was the second?
Opposed?
Let's start with a second.
In the discussion on the sidewalk, the one question that I had with regard to the retention or some sort of stormwater pond is that it was indicated that that was a DEP requirement, and at our last meeting, it was thought that there were no DEP stormwater permits because of the size of the amount of impervious area there on site. I would appreciate if you guys were able to confirm that there were in fact no DEP permits. I'm curious as to why the new stormwater pond was constructed if there weren't any permitting ramifications or requirements from the DEP involved.
No, there is a DEP stormwater.
Okay, so we should get a copy of that in
Yeah.
our completed application.
Yeah, I think the only question I wrote down was the stormwater management plan that we would have had would not have been included. It would only been one.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not.
Well, the old one did, Bob, but that second detention pond was put together after we did the last permit.
Yeah, that's my point. See, the stormwater management plan submitted, we had 0 peak runoff. So what happened with it? I'm assuming it would be better, but assumptions are assumptions.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think what's happened out there, I'm sorry, Jim.
go ahead.
I think what's happened out there is what you had was initially a stormwater management plan, and then a stormwater quality management plan that was implemented by DEP.
But typically, something, i.e. new development on site requires, is that triggering.
Right.
And everything that we heard at the December meeting was not, this was done in, 10, 15 years ago, and nothing's changed out there. So, from my perspective, I'm curious as to what has changed out there, and i.e. requiring a new permit.
New development or failure of the plan.
Right.
Yeah. Or a next state requirement.
But I
But I
think
think I'm
also,
aware.
But typically, new state requirements would get triggered unless they actively do something.
But I think also too, possibly along some of that, there was more pavement put in. So, I mean,
Right.
since the first,
Right.
at that period of time, if more pavement was put in, so you would have more runoff.
Correct.
So that's why it would be done, but at the same time, was it done through the town? Did the town have any inspections on it or anything else? I mean, if it's new to us, is it new to the town too?
2007, it looked like there was a staff level review for additional payment. Well, actually, no, that's not true. My mistake. If you look at your plans, you'll see that you had a signed plan in 2007. So it was the planning board.
The planning board.
The planning board
plans
reviewed
were
an expansion.
With the one retention line.
This one's from 2003.
Right.
The big one is
Is it?
No, that's not.
That's the new,
Well,
landscape
the
plan.
point is, we need to have it clarified.
Yeah.
So the new owners know what's what.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, I do know that they built new stormwater ponds on all their facilities. So my understanding is that DEP sort of looked at all of their 5 facilities and they sort of went through and looked at them. So I imagine this was part of that. I'm not that familiar with the history of the facilities since I don't think got brought up about a month ago. So,
But that would be helpful, to elaborate on when you
yeah.
resubmit more information.
Facts and figures.
I mean, other than that, the limits of construction, limits of disturbance, things like that, in my opinion, look relatively close to that 2003 plan.
And I think I would caution, as I talked with Chris when we had our discussion, is that if the Maine has the intention of doing any expansions or improvements in the next several years, this is an opportune moment.
Yeah, I've told them that, they keep saying no.
Okay.
I'll
But
keep
if they have a wish, not necessarily if they're gonna do it, but it's quote unquote possibility.
Yeah,
And I didn't bring my crystal balls here with me tonight, though.
Council, where is the second one? It's the same
On the other side.
Up in this general area. Toward the front, toward
On
south.
the front.
On the highway side, the road?
No, if you're looking at the building,
Yeah.
it's to the back left of the building.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's the opposite direction of the other one.
Yes, okay.
Which way is the flow? One flow into the other? Or the road?
I don't.
The way we walk it, I would venture say they flow separate.
I would imagine they flow independently, yeah.
Maybe that's why the second one.
Yeah. Anything else?
Do we need to change the name of the application?
You should explain that.
Okay. Yeah, so One Steel ended up selling the property to AIM on December 19th, so AIM is going to be the applicant. But it's all the same people at the facility. The owner, the old owner was an Australian company, the new owner is a Canadian company. But all the folks at the facility who have been there for a few years are the same. And all the main staff are the same. So it's a new name, but we're all part of the business.
Not all the same.
The application was submitted under which name?
It was submitted under One Steel.
Is that?
So originally, the plan was to try to obtain this permit before the sale, but the buyer decided they wanted to go ahead. And that decision was made in a matter of days, and it really closed 3 days after the date.
So they should submit an application under the new name?
I would suggest they just submit a letter indicating this, you can do those, indicate that the sale has occurred. You can give us a copy of the P&S on that.
Yeah,
If you hear the agreement, you can now copy, blank copy the money and so, the sale one. But just something that indicates, first of all, a letter saying the name has changed, and then right title and interest, the sale. You get us a copy of that, and then I'll just change the agenda. That should do it.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
The other issue is the street landscaping.
Yeah. You wanted to make a comment about that? Wasn't that supposed to be a vegetated, I know it was tough to see with snow around. But I thought we had permitting before the vegetated landscaping buffer.
Yeah.
There has been, yes. And it had Roosevelt goes in the planners and everything else.
I think the first problem, as I told Chris, is that I believe Sebago submitted something, but it wasn't a wide enough strip. It's a 25-foot strip, wide strip. And I don't recall the buffering on the side. Was there buffer? And this is around the parking lot, the front parking lot. Did anybody see any buffering between the properties on the side?
You have,
Well, you gotta,
you have
it's
a
not real fence on
natural
one
wild,
side.
you have natural screening.
The requirement, I told Chris what the section was, it's basically buffering around the parking lot.
When it's green, you can't see.
Obscure the parking lot from the
Yeah,
It's all
it's
on the side.
obscuring it from the adjacent properties, and of course, then we have that front buffer to do that. It's not a buffer, it's just a screen on
separating the road and system. The one we've enforced on everybody else. So that's, I think the Sebago started that, but it wasn't a wide enough strip. But pretty much what was there, you know, where the same way from the history.
Okay. But why would they have just put out what was there?
Because it was a quick,
Yeah,
it was a quick job.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they will turn around in a day or something?
Yeah, they did.
But they had wooden timbers and everything else there. But that
But
way.
the problem is, this is a new application. It's
I know,
gotta be
I'm just saying, at this time of the year, these timbers don't stand up too well to a snowplow.
I would venture to always say that raised planters have a high mortality rate for anything vegetation, except for
So it goes,
very, very, well, even that.
well, you can plow over, they grow back.
Yeah.
Same thing with your certificate.
Well, they're not gonna do that in a raised planter very well. Right?
I think the plow loses in that situation. Loses point. Unless it's
And that's not the latest question.
I assume this is what is being proposed.
I know.
Marty, I have no doubt.
I'm sure you're digging up quite a few.
What's there, the stockade fence all the way around?
Yes, it's in the planter.
Yep.
Then it's got.
Those were all proposed?
Yeah, that was proposed, and this was proposed. The problem is, this wasn't.
So,
This, do they have to do that? Or do they
Yep.
have to, you know, there's no,
They proposed that. And I said, okay, sure.
So it's which part is not wanted?
It's, let's show them. It's just this section here now.
Okay.
And this is the entrance. We do have a maximum width here, and I told Chris to take a look at that. This is not getting all too wide. And the understanding with the turning movements that you have for trusses is a pretty wide space. This strip here is about 5. So basically what they did is they worked with what was there.
Yeah, okay.
They probably didn't even have enough time to look at the ordinance.
Yeah, they literally did do it in like a day,
Yeah.
when we were trying to rush it. So one advantage of the sale actually going through and now everything is just
No more time.
not trying to move unrealistic and fast.
All right, do you feel like you've gotten adequate direction from the board?
Yeah. We need to submit a breakdown of costs for landscaping.
Or any other improvements you propose to do?
Right.
Which is no landscaping.
And that was the only problem with the plan, was the buffering and parking.
Yeah. That we saw, but what you're gonna do is give us a plan showing where everything really is.
Right.
Where it exists right now. And the proposed landscaping, that you need to do performance and our, screening requirements. And also provide documentation of the DEP permits that you currently.
Right.
So you know why we have 2 detention facilities.
and I would ask that if any stormwater study was done in conjunction with getting a new permit or something like that, that be the copies available, submitted as well. Should be able to get that fair.
Under that, do you have any places located for like hazardous stuff, maybe like all your propane? I mean, when you guys recycle, you have propane, I know is disassembled or everything else, but it's still like a stockyard. Or, yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to ask.
I mean, I'm just, this is something I'm throwing out, I mean,
I don't believe they accept the tanks unless they're open up.
it's still bleach.
No, no.
That was good.
But
I understand that,
I
but
think the
Still.
plan needs to reflect any hazardous material that is stored. So
Yeah, but like I said,
Whatever.
you still can have a valve that is out of the tank, and if she gets a whip, and guess what, she still won't. Poof. It's not a virgin tank.
And well, there's some oil stored there, I think, because there's some probably gasoline, diesel.
And it's outside,
Right. Yeah, but we're looking for a new plant, so we have. to-
Right.
That way too, the reason I say that is so that if there's anything like that, the fire department and everything else knows of locations or anything else of that nature.
Any further comments?
Positive thing, the best thing that can be said is that I was telling someone in Rundle where you were located, they had no idea there was metal salvage out there, so that's a good
It's a
thing.
positive, yeah.
It's a positive thing. If they don't know you're there, it means that it's not obvious to the public. That's part of what that screen and the buffer is supposed to do, just to help not make it look
Yeah.
too invasive.
Yeah, we have to say.
Stolen and
They're
seized.
used.
The chairman asked that question.
I can answer the question if you want.
Okay.
It's right at Enterprise Drive,
I was just gonna say that.
but it's on the opposite side of the street.
The question was
Sorry.
Fire, there's fire hydrant.
location of the nearest fire.
It's the fire warehouse?
No.
No, it's Enterprise Drive, it's directly across from the Enterprise.
Right on the highway there.
It's on the east side of Route 1.
Okay.
Which means, in other words, we've got a, the road will be shut down. Anytime we have any, most of the development there is on the west side. And, the hydrant is on the east side, which means any kind of fire that we have, it means we're going to be closing that anymore. Because we have to basically lay lines, lay large diameter hoses across from it, which will make state police extremely unhappy, but it's the way it goes.
That was inside the water main zone.
Yeah.
The station that was put in with the cottages.
That's,
They haven't gone across yet, they haven't cut across yet.
yes, they did.
They cut
They
across?
cut across, that was done like with Fritz and everybody else before they redid the Route 1 over.
Okay,
Because
so
there
they
was
did
a
it-
5-year moratorium on
Right,
it.
they did it at Southern Maine Landscape.
With that, they went under, I mean,
So, I can't really say, I think, I know that the plan was always there, I don't know if they did it. You said that they did it prior to.
as far as I understand, they did because they were gonna have the water connection up on that one lot, which was not part of the cottages themselves.
But the point is that there is adequate water in the area.
Oh, no, that's more than 1,000 feet. The cottages,
Yeah, but there's still, across the street, there's only a couple of
Come on,
hundred feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
you're
saying.
gonna have to do a relay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth running all the way from the cottages, it's
no,
half a mile.
but if
No friction.
My question was more directed at the one on this side of the street. Run it down.
Great.
Is there anything else?
Unless
if you want to put a fire hydrant on that side, you can go underneath the road, I mean, connect it,
The applicant have any questions for the board at this point?
Okay. On to the next item, and
Give us a call.
Gary's Auto Salvage, it's not here.
Now, it's not here.
The
Well, there was an issue right that we need to discuss
Should we discuss it again?
on the agenda.
Applicant knew there was a meeting.
So I don't see any reason why we can't discuss.
Okay.
One might want to defer a decision, but we can certainly discuss.
Okay.
The question was posed to me by those who attended the sidewalk, what is Larry's Auto? Because there was a sign there that said Larry's Auto on the building, which is a question. I didn't have an immediate answer for those who asked the question. What it boiled down to, in doing some research, basically, apparently Larry's Auto's been there for quite some time.
20 plus years.
And apparently it's a leased bay, or leased facility there in which he takes cars and restores them and then sells them inside. So it's a huge operation, it's probably one or two at a time. That's the pre-existing condition. And it's been there, quite frankly, it was hard to find, but it was actually referenced in our last review.
Yeah, because, and it's been there, I would say, more than 20 years.
That's done under a separate.
Well, that's not been recognized now.
I mean, we didn't have to address it at the last.
The board was
We never-
aware of it last
Yeah,
time,
right.
but
It's there, but
it
it
wasn't
was part of,
the junkyard.
Yeah, right.
Now, what happens is that Jim Bagel
Issues, reviews it every year. And they get, and the selectmen renew the permit for a lot of those restorations. And he, Chip says he renews it every year, and there's really no issue. He takes a run out there, and that's it. It is it's a non-conforming, it's a grandfather non-conforming use, really non-conforming use out there. From what I can see, and I talked to the town clerk, tried to even find the business license on it, so we'll proceed with that. So, it's basically not something we relicense. Only the auto salvage yards relicense on it.
So we treated it.
It's kind of a non-issue.
been there forever. And every time Gary's always, when we've renewed it, walked it, did everything else, it's always been there. I mean, it's nothing like it's, even on the roadside, it's still there even. So I mean, it's,
Good. And outside of that, anything that stood out, food
So
operations?
there's a question about the marking of the rear property.
Yeah, I mentioned that to you on the phone, the flagging. No flagging on the property.
There was when we last reviewed it. But was that a requirement we had that we had flagged? I thought it was a requirement we asked him the last time we went out there, so we knew where that line was.
yeah, because
But it wasn't a requirement that he's established a line through there, because he said, he's pretty knows where his line is.
The last renewal, it was unclear as to where that line was. So we asked him to flag it, you walked it, and it wasn't a pleasant walk, as I recall.
Yeah, it's all small, it sucked. It was raining too.
But there was no requirement to keep it flagged.
right.
It was just a matter of verifying the line at that time.
Okay. Because,
We found what we could, so that's how we moved it.
Jamie and I had not been out at that site before. Richard went out there, but he remembered that you had gone out and walked the flying area after me. Okay. I didn't see anything else. Jamie, did you see anything that,
No, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me.
I mean, he's got a few vehicles in the CMP right away, under the line. But that's not our issue, that's the issue of CMP.
I'm not gonna get involved in it.
That's what I'm saying, we should be involved in that.
Because actually, it turned out, this is
Because
what-
that's actually his land.
Yeah, it is still his land, because it turned out, when we did the last site walk, one of our former members of the board made a point of going out and finding every pin where that was. And it was underneath the CMP line. And then,
His property line.
yeah, so I mean, and.
The CMP holds an easement over
Correct.
the property.
Farther up, they actually own the fee.
Yeah.
Across that land, it's,
Yeah, I mean, so everything he's got going on is within his property. If he's doing something that violates his easement agreement with CMP, it's up to them to deal with.
we're not gonna enforce that.
Just one question that, I don't know if it's a big deal, but Mark's road for rear access, is that, will that create issues later on?
If I remember correctly,
Yeah, the private way issues, it's going to be worth addressing tomorrow.
Private way issues?
Yeah.
If somebody wants to develop, yeah, there's gonna be a private way issue. The private way issue is gonna be establishment of the easement, is,
But if it's on here, we're signing off on it, that we're approving.
no,
Okay.
and what it is.
because there's no development proposed out.
What it is just access to it, because otherwise it's a landlocked piece of property, which is also a family member.
Conveyance at some future date could be problematic.
Very problematic.
Very problematic.
Yeah, I don't see how it can happen. So,
Ted, should we request that the Larry's Auto Sales be listed as a co-applicant in order to better document that they're standing out there, so that we don't, so that in the future, a different board doesn't look at this 3 or 6 years from now, say, well, hold on, this Larry's Auto Sales has come up out of the blue, and we don't see it listed as an applicant for anything, therefore, you haven't had a standing, even though you've been there for ever and ever. You know, in order to protect from something like that going on, and is there an advantage of asking them to do that?
Well, if you were to ask him to be a co-applicant, then he would be redefining himself as an auto salvage, which he's not. He is an auto restorer, he's not salvage. He brings in material to build a car.
Repair.
Whereas to repair a car, or reconstruct a car versus demolishing. Gary basically is.
He takes the parts off and gives them to Larry to make the car look pretty again, and straightens it out.
But regardless of what it's called, we can call it whatever we want. It's not allowed under the current zoning.
Well, what we could do is, in the findings of fact, if you're concerned about establishing codifying his right.
Yeah.
In some way, we could include the reference in the findings of fact that he exists,
Located
has
at.
existed, and is a non-conforming use, legally non-conforming use, that is associated with, but does not come under the qualifications or the definition of an auto salvage yard that is exempt from any employment under the commission. We could do that in order to protect it.
I think
It's a
something
good
would
idea.
be good because, I could see this becoming a can of worms if somebody wanted to make it one.
Yep. This is a neighborhood where that could happen. It's a good idea, I'll make sure it's in the findings of fact.
To protect them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, right, I mean, you look at that business and it's, you never know it was there other than the sign out there.
Right.
So it's not any more or less detrimental to the neighborhood. So I hate for somebody to look to kick them out.
I've never gotten a single complaint from this.
No, and I doubt that it would. I think it would be most likely an overzealous board member.
And we'll do that. We'll do that in findings of fact. The board will be able to review that and move on that when we come to that point. one thing that you have to do is, this is deemed complete, and since you found nothing out there, to change that or your mind on that, I would say next course of action, barring any other comment, we would establish a set of public hearing date.
Well, in sight of the fact that we also had a sidewalk that was,
Not conforming.
well, not conforming, but did not have a quorum, so not really a sidewalk. Certainly some board members were there, but I think the board should again make a decision as to whether we defer or not defer the formal sidewalk. Since that's been our policy to do a sidewalk for each review.
I'll make a proposal that we not have another sidewalk.
Replacement sidewalk?
Not have a replacement yet.
Not require.
Not require
a
another
sidewalk.
one. Yeah. I've been there a few times.
I've been there. I have.
It's clean, it's the same way it's been, nothing new going on.
I get parts for it.
So you have a motion and a
I'll
second,
second.
right?
Motion and second. No further discussion. We vote on that. All in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed? So moved. Now we got to determine night for the public hearing. So
Our next meeting?
Next meeting?
Want your seats, time enough to notice it?
Gary,
And if I do it tonight, when I get back, I'll have to do it, because I'll have to get it in tomorrow. I won't be here for the same thing. Otherwise, because the baby wants 3 days notice, and I've got to have at least a week, so.
What are you gonna do? The next regular. This kind
A
of
month
stuff.
from now.
there's no rush on this.
Well, his license renewal by the town is subject to approval.
Well, I would suggest that, since he's not here tonight, that in order to give you adequate time to reach out to him and figure that out, we schedule it for the first meeting in February, and if he's available. If not, we'll do it later than that.
All right. So good.
I agree with that. It's all too sensible.
Okay, we'll do so.
All right. Next item, zoning ordinance amendment discussion, request to modify section 8.4 of the land use ordinance to increase threshold lot size of mandatory cluster subdivision from 6 to 13 acres. Khan and Cody and Sylvain Ferriero, the applicant. We briefly touched on this at the last meeting.
Yeah, and I listened the same way. It's not really, it's a request. It wasn't a formal request. It's still an issue that, people need to do. We've batted this round a couple times, and since we're going to be going full bore, run up to June town meeting, this is one of the performance standards we're going to have to make a decision about. So is it good a time as any to address this issue of cluster subdivision? Mandatory cluster subdivisions.
Pros and cons.
Pros and cons. Now, if you look at your, first and foremost, as Bob knows, because he's the one who knows where all the landlines are, the requirement for a cluster subdivision for 4 or more lots is hidden in section 6.4. And it is it's a general provision. It says any lots over 4 acres or over 4 are required to be clustered. Then if you look at our performance standards, which are in section 8, it talks about 4 cluster subdivisions. Then there gives all the specifications of the lot size and all of the other requirements for a cluster subdivision. But the requirement to make cluster subdivisions mandatory is actually, if you want to find it, it's in section 6. Oh gosh, 6.3, A4. Those of you who want to turn the Bibles, it's 6.3, A4, which is page 39, which does read that all residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots shall be clustered in accordance to section 4.8. That was amended June 11th, 2008. As in the land use.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Okay. So even though this is written that way or anything else, we have not had, yes we have, we only had one situation where we've had to cross a stream. And that stream is the same Gulf Brooks, but located farther up the road. Does that give it any latitude or leeway of allowing things to change?
Existing condition?
A newer condition where it's not flat land, I mean, because where his son's was, that's still Gulf Brooks. But, I mean,
I think that's almost incentive to cluster because.
but that also had other restrictions besides property with the railroad and everything else.
Yeah.
But I mean, this had the brook is one issue,
Yeah.
and the railroad was another. Okay,
Yeah.
or the fencing on how far back they could go. Okay, but in this case, you don't necessarily have the railroad in there, but you have so much land restriction by turning up using the Gulf Brook. We don't have a lot of brooks in town here of that flow mass for engineering purposes or anything else to give any leeway. That's what my thought or question is.
Well, by changing this ordinance, or request to change, we're not only dealing with that, we're dealing with anything that's going to appeal with all lots of law.
Well, I encourage, and they had asked me about this, and I encouraged them to bring the subject to us, because this is something, we're not, quite frankly, me bringing this to you folks, besides a resident asking a question, this is a larger issue. I think we talked about this before. Because what this issue is, where this is written, where this provision is in the zoning ordinance right now, quite frankly, this requires all lots of any subdivision, family or otherwise, to comply with cluster subdivision. Which means when I have an incremental family subdivision, as soon as I get to the 4th lot, everything's going to be clustered. Now, how do I go back and repeat the cluster subdivision? Or the next family member that goes in is going to be cluster?
And driveways.
Required to do cluster lot.
I don't know, yeah, I don't know how you interpret that.
How do I interpret that? Because it's in the zoning ordinance, it's not in the subdivision ordinance. Because it's in the remember that one thing everybody misunderstands about family lots, family divisions. Family divisions are exempt from subdivision review, not from zoning review. All family, let me finish.
Yeah.
All family divisions must meet all zoning ordinance requirements.
Right.
They must have the same dimensions, spacing, bulk, and road frontage and road construction standards. There are no different standards for a family lot division than there is for a commercial subdivision. And putting this in the zoning ordinance requires different family division.
Unless it's over 5 years. If it's
No.
divided.
No. 5 years is when you can break them off. okay?
And they're exempt from having to do subdivision or anything else.
No,
Not according,
you can break the lot off, okay? You can break the lot off every 5 years.
that's a subdivision, it says all subdivisions of water fall also.
If it's incremental, it's not a subdivision.
Does it mean this, does
Division
it
of
mean?
land is a subdivision.
Is a subdivision.
Wait a minute, but do we have a definition of subdivision
Yes.
in the zoning ordinance
Yes.
that refers to, I
Division of
presume, a
land.
definition of the subdivision in the subdivision regulations, right?
That's the different, that's the legal subdivision.
But this, what's this
But
have to do
that's,
with
but, but,
clustering?
but because, Tad, in my opinion, because that word is defined, what you might think, or what any of us might think of the word subdivision goes right out the window, and we've got to revert back to the definition.
Correct.
So
And if we don't have that
subdivision
Yeah.
is, if a family division of land of 10,000 lots, for whatever reason, doesn't meet the requirement of a subdivision as per the definition, whether we could think of it as a subdivision or a small town, and it doesn't meet the definition of a subdivision, therefore it doesn't fall into that definition of all lots in a subdivision.
But you turn out have to take into consideration two other things. Okay, one would be a private way, and then after 4 lots or more, the road has to be a certain width. And
But that's a different standard.
but no, it still falls under the same standards, because we ran into that with Mackles.
But
But a
I
private-
agree with what you're saying, Jim. It's that from
It
the land use, it says.
it refers you to the subdivision.
Then you look there, it says,
What
a
page
division,
you on?
this is on, in the subdivision.
Page
regulation,
6.
Page 6. A subdivision is a division of a tract of parcel of land into three or more lots within any 5-year period. If it's 6 years, it's not.
That's the legal, that's the definition of a subdivision.
Yeah.
Right, so
As defined for land use purposes in subdivision law.
Yes.
Right. But also
And
in
our
our
land
ordinance,
use ordinance,
it says
our,
refer to.
it says refer to the subdivision. If you look up subdivision,
I did.
it refers you to the legal definition.
look at the definition in the zoning ordinance, Ted,
Yes, I did.
on page 20.
I looked at it.
See Arundel Planning Board subdivision regulation.
Yeah.
That's, so it's only one division, one definition.
That's the legal.
No, guys,
It says that you're subdividing any.
we're gonna have real problems when it comes down to equal protection of the law. Subdivision, by any definition, I don't care about the state definition, if you cut one piece of land without having to go to town, to the town, or any kind of subdivision regulation, is a subdivision. It's called a subdivision. It's not a subdivision, but it's a subdivision of land by definition, by any definition. Let me finish. And what happens when you have a division of land, that is a subdivision. It's a re-subdivision if you re-subdivide it from what you just subdivided.
But we only
But here
consider
is the
3 or more
situation.
though, Ted.
The point is
You're
that.
splitting it. We don't consider it something. I
Yes,
realize
you
you're
do. You do
subdividing.
consider it a subdivision. It is a subdivision. It's not a
it's
subdivision that is reviewed by the municipal authority or by the planning board. That is a legal subdivision that is reviewed by the planning board under subdivision regulations.
Right, but for the purpose of when we're talking about whether whether a family division would kick in, would cause a cluster provision to kick in. My interpretation of this would say no, because the family division doesn't meet the definition under a subdivision, under the subdivision.
And I would say that that's a problem because that's not equal protection of the law.
But
Well, there's
that's
a-
forever.
there's
I don't think
tons
so.
of things
No, what
that-
it means is it means that you have one standard for somebody who's doing things incrementally, doesn't have anything to do with family, and then you have another standard for somebody who's doing this, as a unit.
But
as a
that's-
business.
but
Or
that's-
not a business, but just let's say I wanted to buy some lots of so on.
That's why the law was put in place.
But that's the
You're
case,
right.
whether it's a family subdivision or me buying a 20-acre lot and cutting off a lot every 10 years. Because I am waiting to do that every 5 years instead of every doing them all at one time,
Right.
I have a less burdensome requirement
Yeah.
because I don't fall under the subdivision ordinance.
You know, fall into the subdivision review. Right.
Well, yeah,
Is that- is it-
the lots have to meet the
Let me ask you
dimensional
a question. Are
requirement.
you achieving your goal? No. Are you achieving your goal? What is your goal? Yeah, I'm sorry you brought this up,
Planning board
because I
goal?
mean,
Right.
that wasn't the issue I wanted to go towards. But, I mean, to me, that's a side issue. The issue was, remember, are you achieving the goal of this ordinance by doing that?
No, we're not. We've had
Why?
some of the largest
Is that what
developments
you
in
wanna
town
do?
have been the incremental
Right.
subdividers.
And so, what is that doing?
But that's,
It's a backdoor around
right.
the ordinance.
And that's a
Which
bigger
is
issue.
what? It is basically, it is subverting the intent of the ordinance, is it
Right.
not?
That's a big issue, but it's not a
But that is
subdivision.
what is happening, it's subverting the intent of the ordinance, correct?
But that's different than,
If someone plays it right, they can really do whatever they want without ever being reviewed as subdivision.
Is that what you want?
No, but that's a big issue.
so do we have,
But under the subdivision rule, if they're going to subdivide more than 3 lots within 5 years, they have got, anybody, I don't care if you're a family or a contractor, you have to meet our subdivision definition.
You have to meet
That's it.
our zoning ordinance.
No, our subdivision rules say that.
But our zoning ordinance, the thing is that you don't have to go through subdivision if you cut off a lot one every 5 years.
Right. And you don't, and you're not even considered a subdivision under our subdivision rule if you
Right.
don't do more than 3 within 5 years.
But
So
this is
anybody
the zoning
can come in and
ordinance.
build
It's a
three.
different animal.
And that's why the
Animal,
four,
and this is why this governs the subdivision of those lots, which are not regulated. Those lots are regulated. They must meet the zoning.
yes, they have to meet all of the provisions of the rest of the regulation.
But including space and bulk.
Yeah, and it says that.
And so what are they doing? They're not coming to the planning board to get a subdivision.
Well, yeah,
well, no, I mean, and they're also, I see, I know where you're coming at this. I live in a subdivision, and, private road, gravel, all my, me and my neighbor's responsibility. I get it. But do we have the authority from the state to make a more onerous ordinance that would really prevent that? Or do we have to follow with what the state definition of a subdivision is?
Well, I would say right now you already have an ordinance, don't you? And that's the big question, isn't it?
We have
You have an onerous ordinance right now,
why is that?
because the ordinance says that basically if you do 4 more lots, you have to do a cluster. You have to cluster.
I don't agree with that.
You're required to.
I don't agree with that.
That's what it says.
I don't interpret it that way.
You don't interpret it that way, it says it.
No, what it says is that a subdivision has to be clustered. If you're not meeting the definition of a subdivision, then you don't have to cluster.
But if you
It's
have,
because it's defined. If we didn't have a definition for a subdivision, yeah, go and look at the Oxford or Old English Dictionary. But we have it defined in both places, both ordinances, the zoning and the subdivision. So we revert back to that definition.
Okay, is that the way you want to do this? Are you achieving your goals?
No, that's a different question. That's a
That is
whole
the
different question.
That's the primary question.
you know,
The primary question is this: you have cluster subdivision for a reason. You have mandatory cluster subdivision because we said it in your comp plan. The comp plan talked about cluster, and the way to preserve open space was to mandate cluster subdivision. You have cluster subdivision.
But that was what comp plan.
Doesn't
Okay.
matter.
No, I'm just saying,
Comp plan.
but the other thing
You
is,
implemented it in 2008. You implemented it in 2008. Now, the question is that something you want to continue to do? You want to require all subdivisions over 4 lots, whether it be incremental or whether it be all at once. Now, we can argue incremental versus, all at once. But do you want to continue to do that, or do you want an option? That's the
let me
first
just,
big question to really ask. And I'm sorry I got off on the other one, because that is obviously a hot
If I can-
issue.
if I
That's
can
not
just-
as much of
and just address that. I've always questioned why they're exempt. But I'm all right with it because the intent of that is family subdivisions. I don't ever want to get in the way of a family splitting so that someone
And their
family
family
can
can
have
stay
part.
that way.
And if we start stepping on that, we're not gonna get anywhere because everybody that has 10 acres in town, they're probably thinking they're gonna give some to their kids down the road. And that's
Okay.
that's all right with me. But I know it.
So then you probably would want to eliminate the possibility of this being a cluster.
If they're gonna do 4 of them,
Well,
Well, I got 5
If they-
kids and I got 20 acres.
we had this
but
discussion.
how often are you
the
stuck
meeting
by? I
before-
think that's what it comes down to. Are you doing it all at once, or are you gonna be doing it?
No, you're gonna be doing it all at once. You know why? Because the private way ordinance is gonna kill any chance of you to do it incremental.
Not necessarily.
Yes, it does.
They-
I mean, I deal with the crime
They
rides
could
in
put
my
in-
office all
they
the
could put
time.
in that
The road.
50-foot road and be.
And show future
Just call it
development.
driveway.
To the end.
Well, could be preparing for a subdivision later.
Well,
And then
that-
5 years later, they can do the next one.
But we've already run into this on the private ways.
Yeah, over and over again, guys.
Well, not over and over again. This is because over the last 40 years, nobody, or 50 years, or 100, nobody has paid attention to the road part of the regulation and right of ways and the easement. I mean, that's what's happened. There has been no oversight on it. At our last meeting, 2 ago, when we went over this, what was proposed by the majority of the board was that for the clustering, it be optional over the 4. So, which would protect both. It would protect both the families if they wanted to keep it. Because right now we say it's mandatory. All we have to do is change that. Mandatory to optional. I mean, that's, to me, is the easiest, most straightforward. You don't take away any rights, you increase rights, you leave the comprehensive plan because there is a plan in place to allow for that. Should people so elect in the property and geology, allow for it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, you say, hey. And again, it gets difficult, but I don't think there's 2 standards for 2 different groups of how you go about building.
And Ted, I would say at least the recent interpretation of the subdivision law, our subdivision standard, as division of tract or parcel of land into 3 or more lots within a 5-year period, probably hasn't been interpreted or enforced maybe as rigorously as we would like to address right now. In that, use where I live as an example. Large parcel of land, 2 houses were initially built on a fraction of that part of land, leaving a larger piece remaining. There are a lot of municipalities, especially in southern Maine, that would consider that 3 lots, and thereby subject to subdivision requirements. only 14 years ago, that was interpreted in the town of Arundel to only be 2 lots, and thereby not required to follow the subdivision requirements. So I think a lot of it comes down to, if we're consistent with state law, I'm good with that. But then there are interpretations in that, or ways we decide to enforce it, that could be handled a little differently if we're trying to make a point of keeping people from subverting the subdivision regulation.
Right. And the interpretation's done back to the way it was. I mean, to the way it should be. 1, 2, 3.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it says that the board, and now in the regulations, it says the board must consider all the lots that are made. So now, if you're only building on 2 and there's a 3rd one, you have to consider the 3rd one. If there was a primary residence and you're building 2 more, well, now you've got the 3 by our language. You have to consider all of them.
Clean that all.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
been
question-
clean, I think.
So getting aside from family divisions, we can go back and forth on it. The simple fact is it the board's intent to continue to mandate
cluster subdivision? And if not, if it is not, and you want to make it voluntary, does that achieve what you want to achieve?
Well, I think,
On any subdivision?
Well, see, that was that's why I put those numbers in, those lot numbers. And you could say, yeah, you always have that option, especially, quite frankly, when you have small lots, and you have a small piece of land, if you have a very small number of lots, cluster subdivision is actually very, very, very onerous. It is a very tough thing.
And in all reality, it doesn't provide a lot of benefit.
It provides no benefit. Right. In fact, I've got three cluster subdivisions that they would love to come back and be able to take that little strip of land behind them and incorporate it into their lots to make them a little bigger. And I said, sorry, you've got 75 feet of frontage. You can't change it all.
So from that standpoint, what I would suggest, just as a talking point, is a threshold to whether it's 15, 20 acres, who knows, where the board would have the ability, along with the applicant, if they didn't want to do a cluster, to, almost have the applicant demonstrate that a cluster subdivision either isn't practical or wouldn't give the desired benefit and then we would have the ability to waive that requirement.
Well, they wouldn't have to come to the planning board.
No, I think.
No, won't have to come to the planning board. Because you go right to the code enforcement officer for a building permit.
Well, not if you get the subdivision approved.
But if you're not calling it a subdivision, the family lots or anything else, and then you're not required, and you're not your power.
That's a special case.
But you're not also covering along the roads requirements.
That's part of the private way to get handled with that submission, be it through the review committee or through the board, which there hadn't been a lot of emphasis on. I think everybody's pretty well aware of that. Right? I don't think we're going to have those same problems in the future.
But I mean,
let me go back to one point, because the original question was, are we achieving the objective with this clustering and then making it optional? The clustering is only one mechanism, one of many things that allow you to save space. Okay, as is that 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, or half acre, 10 acre, whatever. So zoning in itself is a lot of things. Some of the protection districts, for example, are another way to conserve areas. So clustering isn't an all or nothing kind of thing. It's just one tool in a basket to allow potentially to save some money. So if builders have that option, we're potentially going to be able to conserve and save some of that property. Be it on a small one, and again, the difficulty comes in on the geographics, as Marty was saying. You got to go across the stream to get to the good area, and yet you've used up 40% of your land. Well, that might be an ideal situation on a small acre to be able to get 2 or 3 units to pay for that kind of development. But we can't go into every one, and we should never go into specific ones. So by going from mandatory to optional, to me, is a nice, clean, easy way. Everything then gets always referred to the subdivision regulation, or to an exemption if it's a family build, which has been tradition here forever.
Can I say something? I wasn't here the last meeting, so evidently I missed something.
No.
Okay, so I'm hearing the general
The
sentiment I'm hearing
deeply
is
into the subject of last meeting.
the general sentiment I'm hearing is there's no benefit to clustering, and I would argue just the opposite. I think Arundel was very progressive when they put this together. I wasn't on the board till it was probably 20 years ago. It might have been, if not one of the first in the state that had this. And I'm sure there was challenging at the time. Overall, it's worked, and now it's been adopted throughout the state, probably throughout the country. What it's done, the benefits, is to create some open space. And even though it might just be peripheral around, that's still deer trails, raccoons, turkeys, whatever. It provides some space where nobody will be building. It could be maybe a walking path or something, but it does set something aside, maybe not for the benefit of the taxpayer, the property owner. They like to say, I own 3 acres, but some of the benefit in him from people wanting to these clusters is, I only have to maintain half an acre, but I really have access to, and have rights to 20 acres. So there's benefits there. There's a lot of benefits. I don't know how we can protect open space in this town as easily as Prospering. There's one more thing. If you make it mandatory, it means might as well not even be on the books at all. Mandatory means if you want. Optional, yeah. I'm sorry, optional. If it's optional, I don't know what we want.
Mandatory?
Now, I said the wrong term. I was the opposite. I think it should be mandatory. 84 is too few. I'm all right with going more than that. But if we leave it optional, it would be true. For most people, you don't really have to do that. I think we're going to be careful with that.
And to expand on that, I'm all in favor of taking the carte blanche mandatory out. But I think in order to give the board some leeway is to have that threshold to say at a certain point, you've got to get our approval in order to do a conventional subdivision instead of clustering. Because, if you have a certain lot size, and I would say do it by lot size.
How do we say no to it? That our approval based on what?
Well, I mean, it would be the intent of having somebody cluster unless, topographic limitations or the size of the lot or something just didn't match up with clustering that made it impractical.
Well, my observation over the last 15 years is most developers see it as a benefit as well because they're saving on road building, they're saving on utilities, and it's all condensed. And at first they talked about it won't be marketable. Now they don't see that as an issue anymore. The state of Maine is the most sprawled state in the whole country because of our 3, 2, and 5 acre requirements. So we're just spreading out. We're killing the wildlife habitat.
You haven't been to South Dakota, have you?
Yeah, to Montana.
They might have ranches all spread out, but we're just 3 acres everywhere. And cluster is a mindset that I think makes sense. It builds. You can still have you can still have your privacy in your backyard, but you leave that open space that otherwise just gets chopped up and it's private. Could be all fences all around. Where I grew up, it was just all open space. It was seen as a kid. You could play baseball, go do whatever. And then I don't know what year it was, but the fences went up. And to get to my friends the next street over, you have to go all the way around the block. So even though we have the impression of it being open, it's not really. We have this sort of
Yeah, but you can ride your bicycle then without wearing the helmet and everything else.
I would treat Bob the Fox.
I would agree with Tom that clustering has really not presented the board with problems. We've had, I can't remember an issue with clustering other than the one we're looking at now. So it hasn't been a major problem. It has preserved open space, but there are certain conditions where it doesn't make sense. It doesn't apply. So I would be in favor of allowing the board to waive the requirement at a certain point, let's say 10 lots or less, if the applicant can demonstrate good reason.
Once you go to this, that's.
And we have to have some standards, right? But if the applicant, according to the standards we set, can demonstrate that this doesn't make sense and the board approves, then we can waive the requirement.
Well, in some cases, it could be, generating two plans, a conventional plan, a conventionally subdivided plan, and a cluster. You look at the two side by side, and they are essentially the same, other than, you've got some little bit of, with these, like you say, these slivers of open space around, it makes a lot 2.5 acres instead of 3 acres. Okay, then we've got a decision. If it makes a bona fide, if it really has a bona fide effect on the layout of the subdivision and would provide some very considerable open space in a warranted location, then we would maybe go the other way and say, no, I'm sorry, we like your cluster plan.
Yeah. Or we might even do a compromise, saying, well, maybe not a full cluster, but you cluster as much as you can, and we can allow you a little leeway there. So, I think that allows for some negotiation, some review, but we do have to set some standards as to what we're going to look at, what will allow for an exemption or a waiver, and what will not allow for a waiver. But I don't think that would be too hard to do. If we think of the current situation with the Terrio subdivision, to me, that would be an easy one to decide.
Oh. One question, all this about clustering and building together. Okay, this is all for residential, but it's all right to try and have your BD 1 and BD 2, everything all clustered together for businesses.
I'm not following.
You want to build all your buildings together, close together, and everything else. I mean, it's, and you want to have your downtown, this, that, and everything else.
We're allowing for it without requiring.
If you had a 10-acre lot, you just want to put one building on this, it makes you,
Yeah, so I don't think that applies here, but, that would be my solution, is to set maximum lot limit, once you get past, let's say 10 or whatever we want to say would be the number, then it's absolutely mandatory. But less than that, well, we can take a look at it, and if you can convince us that it doesn't work, then give it a try.
Can you say that for no matter what zone you're in? Because you have different zones of acreage.
Yeah, I would say, regardless of zone.
Especially if you go lot size.
what Marty's saying is this as applicable if we're doing a business plan?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Well, how would it affect it?
What if you had to do a clustered business plan?
If you're going to do 10 lots, if you're going to do a business development like that,
Well, do we
crossing or something like that?
exempt
Chevy,
any
for
commercial
example.
subdivisions from the clustering provision?
All you have to do is put residential in front of it.
That's it.
But I don't see why it shouldn't apply to commercial. If you're going to build a unit that's got, 10 businesses in it all at once, I think a lot of the clustering.
Well,
You gotta park in the front, back, and side.
That does bring the issue. Building 3 more units is a subdivision. So, whether it be residential or
We have to be, John, I like your idea, we have to be really careful or clear what those conditions would be. Because we all remember the septic tank
Yes, that's
requirement.
right,
We never required it, yeah, we always understood it was too expensive and expensive, and so we don't want something where we can never.
No community.
Well, that's because the septic thing wasn't properly defined. It was just not
It
done.
didn't make sense to anybody, but because it allowed our discretion, it meant that we couldn't really require it, so. Because it can always come up with a reason, it costs too much, or there's a nice tree I don't want to cut down, or whatever it is. So I think we have to be I'm afraid of having too much of that stretching. But on the other hand,
But it seems to work quite well when we have a set of standards that we are.
as long as we have those standards, I don't know what they would be.
Right.
Okay, one other good thought on this, clustering or non-clustering, how you gonna turn around and have your fire protection? Because we've gone to try to make, extending the fire main down, or we've turned around and had to then have a different developer or anything else of units to put underground water tanks in. I mean,
But how would the clustering or not clustering affect fire
I
protection?
think we require it regardless of cluster or not.
Yes.
So many units, this fire protection has to be there.
we had Sylvain, for an example, on his over there, he had 3 units.
Well,
No, no,
I
I'm just,
agree, three is a little restrictive.
no, but I would just turn around, he had to put in the underground tanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're,
But that has nothing to do with clustering. But how do you feel about standards, Tad? Is it-
I think we could do it, but the issue is, I mean, if you want to say tension threshold, I don't think you need to put in an acreage, because at the minimum, that's 10 acres in the most densest area.
Right.
So that's saying 10 acres. 10 acres or less, you don't have to.
Right, I want to go on record saying that I'm not comfortable with 10 acres, I mean, 10 lots. Because how many larger than 10 do we have? So, I'm thinking 6, 7.
But don't forget, we wouldn't be given an exemption. We would be saying that the board has a certain amount of discretion at that point.
So where do we make it? Do we still keep 3 or more, or 4 more that you have to consider it, or?
got water and sewer.
I would
We're
say-
going up to 10, is that?
Yeah, up to 10. Once you hit 10 or
Then they have
11, then it's no question.
So under 10,
Under 10, the board is allowed to waive the requirement provided the applicant can meet certain standards.
Well, it would have to be 4, because if you
Right,
do 2,
Right.
cluster the 2.
So, from 4
so you split a lot, you get a cluster.
Yeah.
whatever, we can write that.
It's not, well, under 10, anyway, if you split a lot, it's not subdivision.
It's not right. So
So it's
3 or
3
more.
So 4 each side is, and what you do with 3 lot, little 3 lot. So before the 10, is what you're saying. Everything under, mandatory to 4, anything under 10 can be waived.
Let me ask a question, why 10?
Well,
Well, that's a number he picked.
Yeah,
so
it's a
Scott-
number.
It's a number picked out of the air.
why
Could be
not?
8.
Why 8 lots before you have to pay? You know, it's,
Yeah. We're coming back at
How many
your road
subdivisions?
width and turn on your
We haven't
safety
seen
for
somebody lately.
our services in
The
town.
last largest subdivision was Bartlett Farms.
Yeah.
That was, what, 7 years ago?
Yeah.
No, more than that.
But what, over the last,
Yeah, that's
over the last 10 years, I don't know how many subdivisions we've seen, but
it hasn't gone.
how many were 10 or more?
And that's part, and probably that's part of the problem.
Most
You
of
have these
them-
little Annville subdivisions,
Fairway
with
Lane.
tiny little lots and tiny little strips of land around the end that really don't accomplish anything because they're not connected to other open spaces
Well,
to provide what you're concerned about
Hopefully,
is that support wildlife.
hopefully, especially
And
in
Talbot
the
Woods.
western part of town, there'd be those subdivisions with the strip that would be adjacent to each other and they would form some network of.
In an ideal world, you're right, but
Yeah.
it's not working that way because we have older developments that don't have that. Remember, your cluster provisions only came in 2005, what was the date of that, 2004?
What do we do with Fairway Lane? How many lots there? 12?
Which one's that?
Fairway Lane off of Winter.
That's the cemetery?
More than 10.
Haley Drive, Haley Road is not.
What's the
So
one
on the
that,
Boston Road, there's one 7 years ago,
Rundle Estates is still
one of
going.
those states, yeah. But most of the subdivisions, my point is, are less than 10,
Less than 10.
6 or 7 maybe.
But, so what, I mean.
No, you got,
would
you
we
got
want to look at
Clearview
that and say,
Estates.
You know, hey, this cluster, you can do
More
a
than
cluster,
10.
no problem.
So eventually the town will get built up. We might be a few
One way or
years,
the other.
but we will get there. And so as far as what are our objectives, one of our objectives is to maintain open space. How are we gonna do that if outside of clustering, the other major mechanism is required. If you don't cluster, then you buy some development rights. So you're gonna buy 7 acres or someplace else in town. But other than that, I don't know how we can maintain that, because we will get built up soon.
But I know, we're not giving up the idea of clustering by allowing for a waiver.
No, but I think what Tom is saying is, if all the subdivisions are coming kind of less, and so now we're giving them the option.
No, we're not giving them an option. We're just saying, if you
Think-
can
think-
meet
think about it.
standards, then you can get a waiver.
Whatever the standards are, I guess that's what I'm reading about. After seeing the septic, that we had
No,
standards.
and I
for that.
agree, we've got to be careful with them, but I think we ought to, as a board, have that flexibility. I mean, think of, in terms of other things that the board does, if we have this dialogue with the applicant, usually, even though there are no requirements for ordinance, usually the applicant sees it our way. We've had many times when the applicants conform to the wishes of the board, even though they didn't have to, just because it worked, it was a good idea. And I think most people will see the value in it and the reason for it. And we have a certain set of well-defined standards that will guide the board. If it isn't this board sitting here, it'll guide whatever board it is as to what you ought to be looking for.
I think a lot of developers recognize value in clustering. Because it saves money for the customer, and it's quicker to get a project done. So I think most of them are open to it. 15 years ago, they were resistant to it. It was a new model. They just didn't understand. But I think it's worth holding on to some of that. As a small number, that's obviously.
And I agree with you, I wouldn't want to give it up. I wouldn't say, optional.
My fear is, once we allow it to be discretionary, in the mix of the board, there we won't be there, all of us, forever.
Ordinance will be rewritten anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, to bring this to a conclusion, what's the board consensus as far as, John's number of 10? We'll use that figure right now.
I'm not easy with
How about we say 10 or more is required and less than 10? That's sort of
Right.
compromise.
I mean, going back and forth on lots versus, number of lots versus total acreage. And what I think as a board we want to think about is, do we want a developer playing a numbers game to stay out of some provision or another? Or saying, look, if you have a piece of land that is so big, whatever we pick that number to be, 15, 10, 15, 20 acres, whatever, that at that point, going into it that you're going to have to work with us if you don't want to do a cluster subdivision. Or does the board want to say, look, anything that's small, they want to limit it to 6, then, have at it.
Maybe we could we have the building permit restrictions, so for a developer for the year, spec houses and all, and maybe we could do bonus permits if they cluster or something.
And that's one of the things we did talk about last week, is providing an incentive.
If we can have incentives, I'm all right with 10, but if it's just, feeling our way in negotiating it, it's too open for me.
But getting back to Jamie's point, I wouldn't want to tie it to acreage, because each zone, or whatever you want to call it, each region has its own characteristics. So where you have a very open region.
Right.
Whether it's 100 acres and you want to make 10
Right.
lots, or if it's a more dense region and you have 10 acres and you want to do 10 lots.
Right.
The
It's a
overall
different
effect
animal.
of that region is going to be the same. So
No,
I
I
think
get you that.
it works well. I mean, how could you play a numbers game if you had lots versus acreage? How would you
Well,
play?
if there was a threshold that somebody was helping against doing a cluster of something, and we set the threshold at 10 lots, and they decide, well, I'm gonna only do 9, because then the board can't make me do a cluster.
Right.
You know, that's the only thing I was thinking. with that.
That's always going to be there.
Yeah, you might.
That's
Yeah.
always going to be there.
I mean,
No matter what number you
Right.
get,
You
that's
pick.
always an option.
Yep.
You could even play a game, I mean, you could sell, half of the land to
Right.
another
Something
corporation,
else.
which
Yeah.
is really you anyway, and they
Right.
could do whatever, so.
Okay.
Question is that how would any of this fall into effect under senior elder housing? A cluster. I mean, and how would it also, this clustering fall into the idea about your roadways?
I don't think it will affect it. I mean, if you don't cluster, you're gonna have to build, as a developer, you're gonna have to build more roads. And elderly housing, I don't know what relationship there would be.
Numbers, that's what I was using as, because we went through the idea of, at one time or another, with elderly housing, and they wanted to put 50 units in and everything else. I mean,
They'd have to cluster. It doesn't matter.
They'd have to set their own.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so, all right. We've got a couple other things on the agenda, but I'm going to
We have, what's our,
What guidance do you want to give the plan?
That's what I'm asking, what guidance we got to give me here?
I'll throw 6 out there. 6 or less, because under 6 they don't have to, 6 or more.
they don't have to, or they have to get away from it?
Less than 6, they wouldn't be required to do a cluster. No waivers over 6.
So you're gonna have no clustering under 6, period?
If they wanted it to.
Yeah, so you're just gonna throw cluster out for 6 or less?
No, rather than 10, I'm just coming to it.
Well, but
Okay.
there's a difference in what
Right.
you guys are saying. John is saying, for any cluster, whatever number is decided, they're gonna have to come to the board with an exemption and show why clustering doesn't make sense. What you're saying is they don't have to come to the board at all.
Can I ask a question? What problems, outside of Sylvain, Ontario, what problems are we seeing with the cluster requirement?
We're eliminating a type of market lot that is in a large lot.
Houses in the Arundel have a hard time selling any more than the other
Cluster
stuff?
lots are having a hard time selling.
Not really.
Or other forms. Only if the structure's in
Okay,
place.
well, but that's one.
Yeah, but what it does is it eliminates, if you want to do for instance, if a guy wants to do subdivision, wants to do a request for subdivision.
So he wants to have larger
He wants larger lots for the horses.
So he can have any size lot he wants as long as he sits in the district, as long as he saves X amount of open space.
Horses
And
are
that's
the
the
open
other thing,
space.
that what, quite frankly, gentlemen, if you really read the cluster subdivision ordinance, it doesn't, when you read the actual cluster in there, it doesn't say how much you have to reduce the lot size down by.
No,
It says you can reduce it down to 50%, but it doesn't say you have to reduce it down to 50%.
Right.
It says the maximum you can reduce it down is 50%. So the question is, you say, okay, I gotta do a cluster subdivision, I'm not gonna reduce the lot size, because there's no requirement in here to reduce the lot size.
Well, what other requirements would make a type of subdivision unique from a conventional subdivision.
The only thing that would allow you to do is reduce the frontage.
Okay, no, I'm not saying what, plain your example. I don't want to do a cluster subdivision. Jamie, the developer, doesn't want to do one.
I don't want to do.
And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna push the envelope of this cluster ordinance as hard as possible. And I'm gonna say, you know what? Here you go. I'm gonna, if I've got a 2-acre lot minimum, they're gonna be 2 acres. 2.00. And
Or 1.95. 1.95.
1.99. I'm gonna come out, so they're reduced below 2. What else is Had Redway and the planning board gonna tell me that I have to do in order to get that subdivision approved? Contiguous open space around the perimeter?
Contiguous open space. There's nothing that says that has to be around the perimeter.
Okay.
See, there are no standards in it. The point is, there are no standards in it. It doesn't say how you have to do it. It says nothing about where the open space has to be. In fact, if you remember Haley Road, the open space was actually just this little block, this, I think it was like a 5,000 square foot block right by the detention basin.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was open space.
I mean, somebody can take
And that's all they
small,
have.
they
And
can't.
that it's just an open little lot.
Yeah.
Means nothing. Does nothing. Doesn't accomplish
It
anything.
could be a non-buildable lot.
It's
That's
not
built
buildable.
around.
Nobody can build
It's
that.
measured OS, we don't tax it. Or actually, Beth actually taxes it by assigning a certain level, a certain amount of money to each of the lots. That's how she
So what we
does it.
have to do is a little give and take. So we've got to increase the requirements for a cluster, we've got to pull back on some of the demands in terms of, allowing some leeway.
Allowing some leeway on whether we need to, whether you have to cluster. But then,
Within a certain.
but then say, look, if you're gonna have a cluster, this is what we're gonna expect out of it.
This is the way the open space shall be. Shall be.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
Shall be connected to other open spaces in adjacent property. Shall be connected to, identified wildlife borders or something like that. To accomplish what you want to
But
do.
the open space
It
is,
does no good unless it's interconnected.
open spaces on other properties, two problems. They're not being run, there may not be a development that has open
That's right.
space on the next one. And two, the open space may have been in a much better position than on that side of the property where it is. So those kinds of things don't work.
Well, if you
we've
put them
seen
in
that
there, those are
regular-
options for them to look at. You don't say the mandatory, you shall do this, or this, or this, or this. Put ors in between, and now you're opening up possibilities, but you're not being hammered in like you're concerned about. Or making
Yeah, I'm not
something.
concerned about it. I didn't know we had a problem. And even in residential business and parking lots, and, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same problem when you're trying to relate to another property that.
It's unexplored
Might be a
territory.
business.
So one of the restrictions, they can go as small as 50%.
Yeah.
Why do we have that? Why not then be as small as the septic is?
Well, by state law, you can't have anything under 20,000 or 30,000 square feet.
If you had the 3 acre zone, they can only go as small as 1.5 acre.
Yeah, right now, the only thing going is.
But some of that is trying to maintain that type of feel in the different zoning
I
districts.
think it's just maintaining suburban sprawl, just big lot, and we think you have a lot. Where if there was, if you could be down to a quarter acre, if the septic would work, well, whatever the state requirement is.
Well, you'd have to have a sewer system, whether it be a collected septic system.
That's where that community
Water.
septic thing would have maybe.
So the problem is the soils here in Arundel are not conducive to community septic.
But if the developer is able to make it work,
We can improve it then.
yeah, why not let them go small?
Well, it's not saying we're not taking that out,
It's not that.
we're just not making them do it. Because, I mean, that works if we're over in the northwest corner of town where we've got some added soil and we can probably get away with that. But when you're developing in areas where we've got, primary soils, non-hydric, non-bird wetland soils, the edge non-bird soil, that's what you're developing. You're not going to get be able to get that kind of concentrated amount of effluent into that kind of soil. It's not gonna work, it's physically not gonna, it's gonna fail. They're gonna have to do tertiary treatment, pre-treatment before they even do it. So you're kind of putting a burden.
Well, I'm not saying they have to, saying if they want it.
And we
Why
made it
restrict
that way,
why-
we're no longer requiring, we're saying that's an option. And I think that's an option in any situation. I think in any subdivision, I don't think this board would ever refuse the option of doing a cluster, a central water supply or a central septic system.
There's
Because
nothing
we did it
that
with
can't
Bentley,
be
for
done,
instance.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, there's nothing.
We're not prohibiting it.
There's nothing prohibited.
So what if, Tad, you can come up with some ideas for us to look at, right now we have that thing around. Ideas both in terms of tightening up the clustering concept and the idea in terms of giving the board some leeway within a certain range. And then I think, once we have something to look at, we can start looking at some actual possible. I think the board, if I'm hearing everyone right, the board is pretty much in favor of looking at some change.
I'll also see if I can get an incentive in there too.
But
Well, our concern is to get open space in large quantities in an area, in something that's not stretched out, a mass of open space, a contiguous body of open space. It's we want to put an incentive that says, if you're going to do a cluster development, and you're going to give us X number of acres of contiguous open space, yeah, maybe we'll give you some extra density. I mean, we were talking about density incentives.
Density gets you back, where you could come down smaller than your acre and a
Right,
half.
exactly. Then you'd be
If they said
motivated.
it-
Or else you'd say, okay, I'm gonna put in 5-acre lots or something like that, but I'm also gonna give you 20 acres of open space over
I
here.
think that happened
We're
in
gonna give this
Norfolk
field
Lombard Road. They, 4 or 5 years ago, they left probably 2/3 of their original lot in the back. They just built right up front and they were smaller. It actually was better because there was one mass of open space.
Where was this?
Right.
Off of Lombard Road, towards Senate Road. There's a strip of, remember that their uncle lived right across the street or something?
Okay, Arundel,
Arundel,
No.
5 lots or
Is
something.
anyone else states?
Arundel
I
Estates.
think there's only 5 units there.
But if they also want,
Stony Brook?
Is that
Pretty-
what?
off Lombard? Isn't that, his name?
They had a lot of wetland in there too.
Yeah, that's why it made sense to leave it. But why not?
What's the guy's name?
well, regardless,
The objective is to provide a planning board with negotiating.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys,
Are you gonna do that, Pat?
in accordance with what we've directed Pat to do, moving on to zoning map change.
We have a threshold of lots that's agreed upon. that I
We're
can
talking
work
around
with.
2 numbers,
Yeah,
10
I've
and
got
6.
got a whole bunch of numbers here. I need to know which one.
Okay, well,
More,
I
you
would
said
say
required.
less than 10, so 10 or above is
Required.
required, and less than 10, I mean, that's my opinion, I don't know how the board feels, but less than 10, so that would be between 4 and 9. There's some room for negotiation.
So 4 to 9 is optional?
The board has the ability to waive the requirement based on criteria.
At lot number 10, cluster is mandatory.
Correct. That's my concept of it. Bob or Tom, you want to see less?
Well, I just wonder why we're throwing away a good thing. Why would we even ease them back from something that's working overall? I don't know about unmarketable lots or this line development, but outside of that, I know so today, that was very restricted. I don't want to see that happen. I think for a small 3 lot, that's crazy. But see as much of a burden. I think there's a marketing benefit to and the cost savings for the developer as well. And the benefit to the town is we have the open space. I don't want to give up something that has worked without objection. I don't recall any objections to those 8 to 9 subdivisions in the cluster. They all, originally, all been all right with it. Almost
Fiscal, from a fiscal standpoint, anything that slows down residential development is fine with me.
Yeah, that's why I keep paying more RSU.
So, should we go with another number like 8?
I don't want to get in the way of moving forward, but I don't know if the number, we have to decide that right now, or
Chad just wants something to hang.
I want something to work with.
we go with 8 for now, just.
I'm okay with 8.
You know?
Let's go with 8.
And then
I won't
that
stick
gets right
with
in
it.
with this, the private versus public road, makes it consistent there.
We don't have,
4 to 7 lots is,
we don't have a public road.
and 8 is mandatory.
8 mandatory,
8 is mandatory.
up to 7.
7 is the minimum. You know, and the big question is then how much of a cluster are you going to require? And that's something
Yeah.
you got to play with, because right now, all I have to do is move it down 1 foot, and I'm this, that's a huge loophole, so he really wants to fight you. I don't think they will, because, again, the same sort of deal.
You still have to have 50% open space too, so if they have some of them that are close to 2 acres, other things have to be way smaller to keep it to 50%.
No, 50% is the maximum, which can reduce it down.
They don't have to have.
They don't have to have 50%, there's no minimum.
But if someone had 20 acres in the 2 acre zone, if they're going 2 acre lots, they're only going to get 10 acres.
Yeah, but you gotta take into consideration also at the same time, the wetlands and everything else have to be subtracted all out of it. So I mean, you're talking acreage is one thing, but actually buildable is another.
You also have the requirement of net residential density for subdivisions, and you don't have net residential density for lot subdivisions. No, so there's no, I can't see any incentive to do a subdivision in the town of Arundel.
Well, that would
Because
be
the
intent to
family
make
divisions
everybody
or
clustered,
the
and I agree with your assessment of the past, and the reason for the cluster, that was the reason, was to save whatever land you can. And if it happens to only be a little strip around the outside, fine. To do the big open subdivisions without the control that wasn't here before, where we have them without the sidewalks, without the right roads, without the curbing, and all of the other requirements that were always there, didn't make sense. And that's why I kind of wanted to.
What was that lawyer one?
The what?
Lawyer.
Off of Thompson Road, that was like 12 units.
So clustering may slow down some real big subdivision, but as you said, that slowed down some of the residential. So maybe clustering is having more positive benefits. And that can be positive, that may not be a negative.
It basically to push people to do more just single divisions.
Well,
Until
thought
such
out.
time that all of the frontage along the roads is consumed.
Right.
Then we're gonna start pumping out behind.
Well, then you
Now,
can't
that
use
brings
state
up the
lots.
question of, hey, have we achieved preserving rural character, because now we have houses all along all our roads, because of rural character. So,
But if they really follow the intent of the thing, you'll have this cluster,
yeah.
and you have open space here and open space there that will be there forever.
Sure.
You know, where instead of having over the course of a mile, house after house after house out by the road, you only have this one little area.
But if you want to achieve that, you're gonna have to get more aggressive. Because
And-
right now, this doesn't do what you want to do.
Right, and I think you can look at the standards of clustering and say that they haven't been a great success, using Bartlett Farms as an example. Because what has what of the provisions or the advantages of a cluster subdivision would you say Bartlett Farms has? Less road distance?
No,
If exact,
no, they didn't.
I mean, everything sort of tucked into one portion with large expanses of contiguous, or large expanses of uninterrupted open space?
Beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I don't know if it's economically feasible for the developer, but yet push farther in. I
Like
mean,
you
put
could
that
have-
open space up front, is what
Right.
I'm saying, which is a wonderful gateway.
Oh, yeah.
It's an incredible gateway. It's a beautiful project. And he has very, very tiny lots, as we all know. You don't have the maximum 50% all the way through there, but there's a heck of a lot of room.
But his benefit was he was able to get 50% density on the vast majority of his property, where he could have put in 2 houses up front. And still had to have built the roads and everything else to get back in the bigger one. So huge benefit construction-wise to go there. If that hasn't, so, and a benefit to us, I think, to the town with that.
My concern is his absorption rate has been awful.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the size of the lots, I think it's economic.
Yeah.
Well, people are
There's
buying
gardens
houses,
now.
but they're not buying them here. Those lots are
Well,
going.
But
Well,
is
no,
that
but
because
the
they're
price
only
drop.
1 acre lots, or is that other fact?
with that little road,
Price.
I think it's costing the little road that it comes out on, and either way you go, it's traffic nightmare, and everybody knows it. All you gotta do is go out, look at them, and try to get out of there.
Trying to make a left turn off that road.
The only
Oh,
reason
yeah, yeah.
real estate is selling a product.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're buying the shoreline stuff, the coastal stuff. The high-end stuff always moves anyway, but anything
Yeah.
else is.
Buy a $2 million lot, buy a $2 million house, tear the house down because they don't like the
And
windows.
that's where I think the standard needs to have some more.
We've got to have some more, we've got to have some more people. If you really want to make this work,
Right.
you got to have a minimum, a maximum, a minimum and a maximum. We've done minimum and maximums elsewhere. You don't have a minimum here. You put a minimum in here, and now you're going to get through cluster work.
We have to look at that.
I am going to look at that,
Yeah,
because
clear
if that
what
is
our
your,
objectives
if
are,
that's
too.
your desire, I mean, the only thing that I worry about is that at some point, somebody's going to come in with, like, say, an equestrian subdivision, and want to put him in, and he or she is going to be able to do it because of the cluster subdivision. Because we say, absolutely not. We said they want to put in 15 equestrian lots. Can't do it.
Would that be a business or agricultural?
No,
or-
it's just a subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, if
Can we
It's a
classify
residential
that as
subdivision.
something else?
you,
I mean, since it's being used for equestrian horses, which would be called agricultural subdivision, I mean, yeah, but I mean,
If they want to.
The primary use
They
is
have 15
residential, even you're not equestrian from anything. The primary, the principal use is residential.
you're gonna have the barns, and the horses, or the
Size
residents.
3 is a minimum of 38. They can have 50.
I live in my business, and they don't consider that
There's nothing that
residential.
prohibits
Don't
that.
tell me.
I live there for 90% of the
One
time.
meeting at a time.
All right.
I want to get the zoning map changed.
Okay. Well, that one's even worse.
Yeah, so we should spend 15 minutes on, 20 minutes on, that's Public Roads idea, right?
Yes.
I think Bud would, well, yeah.
Not his idea, he brought it forward.
He brought it forward, and the issue there is gonna be, Bud has pretty much proven a couple of things. In Bud's situation, I think Bud's, shown that his lane, he's got a map that's different from the map that was originally used to delineate that block that is, the resource protection district that's around the Brimstone Pond area. He's got a map that was done by a totally different wildlife biologist. It wasn't Phil Bozeman. That was Phil Bozeman's old map. This is a new map. Fine. You get a certified copy, and we'll see it's over on Du Bois Lane now. That's going to be popular with one thing. So
But
it's,
has that change in the wildlife designation been officially adopted by the state?
that is what I need to find out. And I've got that letter, we've got the letter from the wildlife biologist in Gray. Terrific. Is that the official map? And I
kept asking Mike Morris that, and he says, I don't know, I don't care. Because as you know, whereas they used to include deer yards as part of their resource protection, they backed off and they've now said, well, we think that would be a good idea. We encourage you to include deer yards in your resource protection
We did.
district, but we don't require it. And you'll notice in this table that I gave you shows the latest mandatory shoreline regulations as are required by the state now and what we have. And you'll see that
Is that like clustering?
you'll see that the shaded areas on the right hand, on the left hand side of the mandatory are those regulations that are not mandatory but are suggested, or let's put it this way, they're open for municipal implementation. The municipality wants to use that old definition of areas within 250 feet of an upland edge and freshwater and coastal wetlands that are rated moderate and high waterfowl. That's no longer a mandatory RP district. It is still in our ordinance. You'll see the date of that being down. The only reason we changed in 2010 was we called it a resource wetland. But you'll see that all of those are 2000. So the shorebird nesting, waterfowl and wading bird habitat, deer wintering areas, those are the date from 2000. We kept them in our update in 2010. They're no longer required. Okay. So that's something. There's something that if we wanted to, we can change that. Floodplains still the same. We don't talk about all the floodplains all over the world. We talk about the Kennebuck River because that's the only floodplain that we have along the river. We have no real artificially formed ponds. We have Brimstone Pond, but Brimstone Pond's floodplain is less than a 100-foot setback from the upland edge of the wetland. So that doesn't matter. We just basically have one major area right now that is the Kennebuck River. Of course, we missed the meeting today on the new floodplain regs and the new floodplain mapping. I looked at it carefully, and Jim was trying to avoid it. So we have the new floodplain mapping that FEMA has released, and we have to comment on it. We have to really take a real hard look at that and see if they decided to include some streams. We will recall that we have a very large floodplain that basically lies between Dutch Elm Golf Course and Irving Road. That is the largest floodplain area we have in the town, and it is inland. It is essentially a swamp, and it is still designated in the new floodplain as being 100-year floodplain. So,
Were the changes to FEMA's newest maps going to include inland areas, or were they mainly coastal?
they were mainly, no, they were coastal and taken out of the county. It is going to be.
So it does have some inland
It does have inland.
changes to it.
And its changes on the, to Kennebuck River will be on the tidal area. Goes all the way up to 35. So, the tidal ends at the bridge, essentially.
Less of a disaster than the last time we were out.
Just about as much of a disaster. I don't understand it because they don't fall into power. Well, what do I know? I've been to the Black Hills where the water flows up there, and I guess it does that too here. So, it doesn't fall into topography, and we don't understand. Right.
That's depends on the way the wind blows.
There's gonna be another,
I'm sure Kennebuck, I had a lot to do today, but it might have been fun to go to Kennebuck and listen to Kennebuck's response to the new wetlands, to the floodplain maps, because I'm not sure that we're that much better than we were before, especially for the coastal areas. Because they're presuming a 3-foot sea level. They've been presuming that for what, a decade, 2 decades now? 15 years at least.
Ask down north.
Well, no, this is the state of Maine has said that basically sea level rise will occur in the next 25 years, it's going to be 3 feet. Now, they're not ascribing that entirely to global warming. Part of it is glacial rebound, or glacial re-rebound, which is, I don't know. They just have a trending of sea level rise, and they projected it out in a straight line fashion. So that's what some of these
Well, it's just
So
like
they're
that.
making the property owner pay.
No.
We don't have coastal, we're not really that impacted.
So to get to the fact of what Bud is suggesting, to make this a little shorter, if we adopt a state when those shaded areas and we take them out of our zoning,
If you adopt a state, you're gonna get rid of pretty much most of the shoreline zoning in the town.
that's what we want to do.
Except for, yeah, and that's the question. That's the big question to ask. And that's why I kind of put this together. And I'm not sure you have to do it right now because I'm going to pursue Bud's
Can we do it
request.
piecemeal? Can we accept some of the things the state has and do some of the things else?
You can
I'm
do
just
whatever
saying,
you
you can do
want.
whatever you want.
Okay.
Bud's argument right now, the argument that Bud has made, that frees him up to do what he wants to do with his property, he has shown a different dairy wintering yard than what we have. That is his main beef. And we've had deer, even if we keep deer wintering yards.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we ought to be able to leave this here and that one,
That's right.
He doesn't have them.
That's what
The only
I'm getting at.
problem is, if we accept that, then we're gonna put a deer wintering yard on somebody else's property.
But we deal with the,
We're actually
not
is.
mandatory though.
The problem is the deer wintering yards move.
Absolutely.
They move based on, all you have to do is do a cut and you're gone.
Yeah.
Of course, you're on the grave penalty.
Yeah, but they're just feeding them in the back. You can see all the deer out there. In fact,
I think we'll
they
have
don't
some
even care
winter-
about the skidders, they're just coming right
They
at
go-
you.
Yeah.
It's true. And that's the point. I think Bud's problem can be resolved. The issue is, we're coming into, and I'm gonna jump ahead, Roger, I hope you don't, I jump to item number, well, item number 4, which is the schedule for the proposed ordinance changes. I'm just gonna jump over to that, saying that basically, given what this board did with the comp plan committee, decisions you made at your joint meeting in November, which basically it stated that, yeah, we're not gonna get the whole ordinance done. We need to bring the new ordinance forward, so we'll only include those areas that we've agreed on, those business districts that we'll have ready and agreed upon. The only problem when we do that, gentlemen, is we have all the performance standards done in the new format. So, this is one of them, right here. And we can keep shoreline zoning the way it is right now. And put it in, it's gonna have its own section, and keep it the way it is and deal with it later, or else we deal with it sometime between now and then.
I think with the time limits we have, dealing with it later, it's sensitive for a lot of things. You
Well,
just have to
okay.
fit it all in.
It's gonna be extremely difficult to do all this stuff. But.
I agree too, with the, I guess, the caveat of if things have changed on official state maps, then perhaps we should reassess it.
Anything from the state map should be implemented.
Right.
And the only issue that I know of is this deer wintering. So why not hold the deer wintering yard in this and say that applicants must demonstrate that there aren't deer wintering yards on their thing, and if Bud can go and get a person up there.
I wouldn't even say that they must demonstrate that there are no deer wintering yards, because so there's a deer wintering yard. If you build there, they're just gonna move somewhere else.
Well, again, I'm not going to carrying down things that seem to have worked. Whoever wrote this, and I didn't, was concerned with preserving deer wintering. And I listened to the discussion. They may move.
So when we wrote this, it was because the state required it. remember.
But I don't remember it being optional or something like that.
Well, here's what I would recommend, if I may. You've got a lot of stuff to do. I would recommend you guys chew on this. Really take a hard look at this, because this gives you a real clear idea of what we require that's above and beyond the state. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Some of these things, it might be a good thing. You know, there might be other wildlife that's more important than wintering.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, there might be other wetlands. I mean, before, remember, we included wetlands that the state doesn't regulate. We included swamp wetlands that were over 10 acres that had a certain value based on building what was beginning with habitat maps. And because of the wildlife and because of their location and the size of these areas, you guys decided these were important. So we go well beyond what the state requires right now. You want to evaluate that. Chew on this, take a look at it, think about it, and if we want to make some changes, terrific, let's do it before June. You don't have to do it tonight, but take a look at those and really take a hard look and ask yourselves, are we achieving what we want to achieve?
Okay, why don't we put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Okay.
Sometimes I question what is it we're trying to achieve.
That's the big question always. Because zoning is the tool. It's not.
One of the reasons why we have this is the state required it.
Yeah.
Outside of that, what else are we trying to achieve?
The only thing, the reason why you would do it is, number one, to preserve wildlife habitat, to protect water resources, to protect important wetland resources that serve a multitude of functions, including stormwater retention and stormwater quality. Even though the state doesn't consider wetlands to be filters,
They are.
Mr. Odom will disagree with him, and his whole family will, and has for the last 40 years, on the value of wetlands for those purposes. Our swamp wetlands, our clustering wetlands, wooded wetlands, perform great functions for the town. They really do. The question is, we have lots of them. What's important?
What's critical to preserve?
What's critical to preserve?
Well,
And is it, I would say some
I
of
would
them are
say
important.
the Brimstone Pond area is
The most.
probably
I would say that is important, but I would also say something like the Rundle Swamp area. And some areas in some of the more developed sections of town are just as important. The other thing I also question is, I think some of our streams are underprotected. We really don't, streams, I think, are actually more vulnerable than the wetlands. And we only have a few streams that we regulate because we base it on the state regulation of the blue line with the 7.5 minute quad. And there's a lot of streams that are real, honest to God streams that don't show up.
Time of year.
Well, no, they're perennial. I would agree. I'm not sure intermittents. I've never thought intermittents had. Some have value, but in general they don't. But some of we have perennial streams and some big perennial streams that don't make it on the plots, and they're unprotected. They don't have the resource. They don't have the stream protection district.
Well,
What they
have the
do have is a
75
50-foot setback for the buildings. There's a 50-foot setback for buildings. It does nothing for any other structure. Not parking lots, not clearing, you could open it up completely, just clear cut across it.
Okay. One item here was discussion with action. The scheduled meeting with property owners. Have you talked to any of the property owners?
Yeah, there was Marty was right, there are a lot of people that are gone. Plus on top of that, expanded the list. And right now, I've got a list of 30 property owners. Well, there are, because we were mainly, those 8 we're looking at are the ones that are really going to be impacted by the expansion on the east side of Route 1. The big property owners between Old Post Road and Route 1. But then when you look at the boundaries we were talking about, we've also got smaller property owners on the west side. There's a lot more of those. Plus, that big quadrant down over by the speedway, if you want to
for any other buildings.
Racetrack.
The racetrack, thank you. The racetrack over there, you know, there's a lot of land in there, and those are, there are actually 4 property owners over there. I've got a list of 30, I would imagine that we might get 10 to 15.
Yeah, depends on what time of year.
Well, we aren't gonna get Bentley, but we already know what Bentley is. He's giving us a lot of info. But, you know, we've got, his song will be around, and the Doors will be around, and the Drews will be around, there's a lot of Drews in this. And,
Probably a
Adrian
pretty
Grant
angle.
is, but Adrian Grant's already told us what she thinks.
So, good break.
Stephanie Nagel, you know, she'll come.
Depends on what time. This time of the year, it's definitely at night.
We go south.
And depends on which week, what,
Well, I want to get it out, but I would say let's, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
Do it on the 23rd. We'll get it out on Monday. We don't really have much coming on the 23rd.
Well, whatever.
what public hearings we got.
We got public hearing the 3rd of February. That's the public hearing. We have it probably, with luck, we'll have it for both salvage yards, solid waste yards. We'll do it one night.
The third or the?
No, the second Thursday of February, not the first. You said the third, and that would be the first.
Have to be.
Yeah. That's the 13th. Well, we're doing it actually on the 6th.
I would say do it as soon as you can get it.
Yeah, because-
Together.
I would-
The June meeting's coming pretty quick.
Yeah, well, also the complaint committee would like to attend that as well.
Good.
So, because you remember, that's one thing they asked you, if you could attend that as well, or at least there are certain members who want to attend that, so.
But it's always open to the public.
I know it is.
It's great, it's big, but it's not
So what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying January 23rd?
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot for January 23rd.
Next meeting.
That'll be 20, that'll be, well, what else do we have? We have the zoning.
And that is, this is a zoning issue.
And
We have a lot, unless you want to do it at another time, you want to do it the following Thursday? Well, let's see, we don't have anything coming in.
One still would be there.
Steel will be there, I've got, I also have I have something you guys haven't, we haven't ever done before, so I don't know how quickly it'll come in. That'll probably be coming in for the 23rd. That is a shoreline zoning, change of use. When was the last time you guys had one of those? Never.
Surprise us.
Never. I got a conversion of an industrial building to a residence in the shoreline zone.
Is this a plan number report now?
No. No.
So
Yeah, you can come to the industrial building, report up, you're good.
Yeah, I know you guys don't want to. I'll be looking at, I'll see if I, oh, jeez, come on, stop. Get on.
I didn't know we had an industrial building in the shoreline zone.
Sure we do.
Sure, we got them all over the place. I'll be shooting for the 22nd and the 23rd.
Well, wait till the, I'll explain.
22nd is the meeting.
That's why I got it under my notes.
I know, and this is good, you know, this was probably, let's talk about this. It's probably gonna take some time. We have that many people, it's gonna take some time.
We don't have that many people.
But even if you have them here, we plan on, like, we have a meeting, what we're anything else on the agenda with that.
Either that or turn out, put some feelers out, because if you get only a few, and mouth will go, and you'll get more in the next meeting.
Yeah, have follow up in a month and a half or something.
Now, you need it before a month and a half, you're gonna drag your feet, and it's gonna be,
2 weeks later,
No.
we have to get started, so.
We have to.
get it
The
started.
problem is, like, the complaint committee wants us to do this for every district. Right.
Well,
I could lay that on the complaint committee and say, okay, you guys go do it.
Yeah, why not? They don't have anything else to do.
I don't like.
I mean, we've had most of the businesses most of the people in the economic development talk with most of the businesses along all of the things we did. Very severe. I mean, almost everybody.
Yeah, I'm not going back to Townhouse Corner because we've done two public hearings.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's not, that was my point. I'm not sure that that's needed.
Okay.
I mean, it's always good to get a lot of input, but I think we've got input. I don't know if there is.
So John's falling asleep on me. There was no public comment, so we got you. Planners report. What you got?
Oh, did we skip over something?
No.
No.
Okay, you guys want to get out of here? Okay, planners report. I do have, as I said, believe it or not, in shoreline zoning, if you're doing a use conversion, it goes to the planning board, not to the CBA. It usually goes to the CBA, but in this case, it's coming to the planning board. And as I said, you've got a former fish hatchery, a research facility over on River Road that we were converting to a house. It's in the shoreline zone. It's in the resource protection. So the issue is that they want to expand it to 30%. 30% is not tricky. That's the code enforcement officer's responsibility. But you have to look at the application for the conversion of use. So you're basically going to take something that's less intense than the original use. And they're putting in a new septic system that's outside of the shoreline zone. So.
The original footprint.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, because you only can expand 30%. But I tell you now, the expansion's not your game. You have no authority over that, so don't even go there. What you have authority over is whether or not the change of use is going to have an impact on the district, on that property, the district, and the adjoining properties. It's going to be easy.
I think I will be.
Sure. Let's see what else I got going. I've had two more approvals on exemptions to the right of way ordinance. Got two more of those.
Where?
We have one on West Lane, another one on West Lane too.
Now, you're saying the exemptions, but they're
These are
having-
exemptions.
But they are having to do better roadways and stuff in it?
One I did not have to make an improvement on, and West Lane, you remember, was reconstructed this summer. And what they did is they took their two lots, remember, we had a maximum of 2 lots, and they took the second lot, that was just approved yesterday. So, we've got that. Otherwise, we're kind of quiet on even on the staff review level. Have been meeting with, we had a rather rambunctious meeting with the code, the comprehensive plan committee, and there were several EDC members there too. And there was a very large push to re-examine Route 111 corridor. In fact, they're looking at the potential for an M6 district. M5, it sounds like we've got roads in England, doesn't it? But the M6 district is being proposed to extend from the CMP power line all the way to the town border to Wyman. And there are members, and the EDC and members of the comp plan committee are pushing to make that a commercial district. Business district, it's mixed use because of the history street. But they want to see that zone change. And the argument on there is whether or not that's appropriate, whether or not that's going to be, actually, one of the arguments is that going to produce anything to do that? Is it a viable business district, given site constraints? And the other question was, what's the nature of the uses that will be out there? The thing that's really interesting about this is the comp plan committee has been following our review. We established what we want to do in various districts, and they've reviewed that, determined that meets the original objectives, and they've written small paragraphs describing in agreement with what we're doing. This one's going to be different because if they do that same MO, writing a small paragraph of the goals, we have a real problem in trying to figure out exactly how to achieve those goals. Because some of them will be for large developments,
involving open space retention and a mixture of different large developments, and business opportunities for the future. How we're going to translate that into an ordinance is going to be a real interesting thing.
Now, do you have a crystal ball?
No. Well, yes, it's if you build it, they will come. That's the the second thing that is going to happen is that I'm going to proceed to do a real quick and dirty photometric study on rural quality. Because the big issue has been that the R4 district, the intent of the R4 district is always, of course, rural conservation. That's what the district is. And those who are opposed to the rezoning Route 111, one of the arguments has been, and the citizens have said in the past, that it's really important because of the rural character of the Rundle. So the issue is that where the rural character is? Is that an important district to people? Because people are saying, yes, it is, and everyone is saying, no, it isn't. So we're going to define it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very quick photometric study, which I'm going to be selecting people at random from the town and give them, when I used to do this before, I'd give them an instant camera, and say, go take 10 pictures of the areas in Orlando that best depict rural character that you find valuable. So go take 10 pictures and bring it back. Since it's a digital age and everybody has a digital phone, I'll say, go take it's actually like 7 pictures. Go take 7 pictures showing the best of rural character that's valuable to me in the town of Orlando and send them to me. And then what I'll do is then what we'll do is we'll sort through those and see if there's similarities, and then start showing it to sample groups of people. And if it comes, and then we'll find out where the areas they think have important rural character are.
This is important to me.
Oh, yeah. I can flip this one. I did it again. It took a month to do it again.
And you're gonna sample how much?
Very small. You know what the significance factor is going to be, John? The significance factor is going to probably be 0.05.
I'm gonna say, yeah, so totally irrelevant survey.
No, it'll be an indicator. Because right now, we're making decisions based on assumptions. Right now, people are making assumptions that Route 111 is not important, or Route 111 is an important from a rural character standpoint.
Look how it's traveled.
The point being that from a scenic standpoint, remember, we still have a section in the zoning ordinance, comp plan, that says that we need a 150-foot, it varies. We have a protection corridor in the Route 111 corridor, which we should build standards. Oh, yeah. We just have never implemented.
No, I thought the protection corridor.
No, we just never implemented.
No, throughout protection order was still in there because you could not expand until every spot was filled.
No, that's
a different.
Yeah, that's a different community.
All the rest of 111 except for that.
Right. You want to watch the green grass grow as you drive by.
Do you know what section that is?
I don't know. I'll pull it out. It should be.
Yeah, but
Yeah. It's in the.
it used to
Okay,
be
what's
in
the
that.
else?
You took that out?
Next.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry, it's your.
So, anyways, that's going to be coming at us, and they can just blow everything in terms of any schedule that we have. Because if they decide they want a new zone in there, because the intent was we're going to just get those business zones we've described, get them done, get them in the new ordinance format. Because remember, none of this happens unless they convert everything over to the new format. So all the stuff we've got now has got to go over to the new format.
Are we all right with maybe saving that till next year?
No.
I don't know why the.
We're chasing too many tails.
We are chasing too many tails, but that's what happens when you have too many committees.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's so. I don't know. Well, you guys live on 111. How do you see the development on 111 beyond where you live?
Never happened. It's a waste of time.
Soil conditions. Car dealerships.
There's no infrastructure, there's nothing there that.
Still don't
This is
have
going to be the same argument we had.
You still don't have it on Route 1?
I mean, you can do whatever you want, it's just a waste of time.
more heavily traveled than New Ulm.
But that's not for our discussion.
Actually,
now.
it's not. Irwin has a higher traffic.
No.
Irwin has a higher, total combined. And also Route 1's traffic is projected to increase in the future, whereas Route 111 is going to stay fairly static because the projections for economic growth in the Sanford area are declining. And that's based on a study that DOT and Charlie Cogan and
Well, there's nothing
did
in our
just 2 years ago.
an overlay.
That we had the final meeting at your place over in North College.
Okay, so we have anything else, Mr. President?
What else do you want?
I'd like to know about Kate's Butter.
Oh, yeah.
It's there. How do you like it?
I don't know.
On the open.
No, but I understand there's trucks that are, there's reefers over there.
So is it.
What's the big move?
You know, some of us live on the,
Oh,
we don't go over that way.
You'll hear the fireworks go off in Biddeford.
They're
Go
actually,
watch it, yeah, find it.
I'll watch it, I'm sorry.
they're actually moving in piecemeal. It's not one huge move, so they're moving in piecemeal.
How come I can't
Things
hear
are,
that?
you know,
Some operations are.
things are going well. I don't know if they have equipment running yet.
Yeah.
When do they
They
get
get-
I hope
back?
not, because they get a little problems.
Forget occupancy.
Yeah, but they're getting close to it.
Well, remember, one of the things that you guys put as a caveat was they could not get a CO until they finished all the site improvements. One of the improvements that has not been completed has been the landscape and buffering mitigation.
They're still working on that.
You're not going to play like to the ground with this condition.
So are they responsible for coming in front of us? To
No, they're
request the-
responsible when they get the CO for code enforcement officer.
When they can post a bond. No, no, they
That's
can
not what
post
you said. You know, we have to come back and you guys have to approve and post it on.
not a bond, not a bond, they can post a cash account.
Sure, so
Sure.
But you guys are gonna have to approve it. Because you're very specific in your findings of that.
Oh, I thought it was.
What about seasonal cottage?
Say again, Marty, or shut?
What about seasonal cottage?
Seasonal cottages is going to be dependent, quite frankly, on the success of the tip. To get that tip.
Well, it's it. Fill me in, I don't know anything about it, I'm asking.
The seasonal cottages, as you well know, has basically stated that they right now, the cost, site development costs are more than they're projected, that they cannot, right now they're investors. They have some very heavy duty investors. Need some assurances that they'll get their money back for the site development costs. They'll get a return on the site development costs. They'll at least not lose their capital. So what they've asked to do is to, they've asked the town to participate in the TIF district. And the TIF district involves no investment by the town at all. What they want is they want a return. What they do is they get tax relief for a sliding period of time, which their taxes are reduced in a credit enhancement fee, which ensures over the life of the project, or over a 25-year period, that they will have a capital return on the investment in infrastructure improvements. And it will result in about a $50 million project, as you well know, and a $10 million tax revenue shelter. $10 million of sheltered revenue. When I say sheltered revenue, the revenue is sheltered from inclusion and revenue sharing formulas with the state,
RSU?
RSU, and also the county tax, tax being raised by the states. $10 million of revenue. $10 million of revenue and the associated valuation will now be included in those calculations for a period of 25 years. And it also does the following: that money then has to be channeled into that, those revenues have to be channeled into some sort of economic development. So that money can be used for improvements, specifically to fund either the improvements themselves or the debt service on the improvements. That would benefit the town's economic development infrastructure. Selectmen I put together a list of potential eligible projects that money can be funneled into, and it ranges everywhere. The first priority is sewer on Route 1. Sewer on Route 1, improvements on Route 1, improvements to the streets. Economic development infrastructure in terms of providing money for studies and grant matches, small business loans, seed money for leveraging small business loans and grants for business improvements, lighting.
Why is that on the tail end of it?
I don't know what to tell you on that one. You'll have to talk to select. It was on the list, Marty. I made sure it was on the list. As well as something that intrigued everybody, and that was buying a pressure reduction station for gas and distributing it, which has a lot of potential. It has actually gotten Dayton Sand and Gravel very interested. One of the target areas would be Route 111. State Sand and Gravel is very interested in gas. They want to go with natural gas, obviously, to the and even if we didn't do distribution, we could do essentially pressure reduction industry filling. So you basically, what you do is you just offload into large pressure tanks to semis. And then those are carted to a site and distributed right to another one. Kids Fund is very much. So these monies, these are all programs that we're going to include in our application to the state. The decision on what is the priority and what shall be implemented is done by the selectmen at a later date, assuming we get approved. But the biggest thing is that that's the benefit for the town. The real big benefit for the town is that obviously it will give the capital to these guys to build the project. The upside of it, the downside is that it fails, right? But the fact is that any credit enhancement is only based on what units they build. So if they put in the infrastructure and build no units, or sell no units, the town's not going to have anything. They have to build the units and the tax revenues from that for a period of time to return to the developer in a declining fashion over a period of time. While the town's level rises up. So it's a good system of giving them the ability to get a return on their capital and ensure that the thing is built. And then at the end of 25 years, the credit enhancement agreement, which has gone to zero anyways, disappears and all of the revenue goes right to the town. So it's a $50 million project that the town will add in for 90. The market study, they did a market study. The market study was pretty damn good. I don't know if the someone will release it to This one actually was done by skeptics. So, but the good thing, John, is that people are always concerned the town is going to invest money or something. It's not investing money.
Well, we are. We're losing tax revenue.
Right now, you're not getting that much tax revenue anyway. You got a vacant lot.
It's kind of the old Ronald Reagan thing. For a period of time, half loaf's better than no loaf. And the thing is, it gets it in.
Yeah, but when you say it doesn't cost the town anything, that's not really true.
Well, what I meant by that was a lot of people assumed the town was going to be investing money.
That's what I thought. They were going to be foot the bill.
No, not foot the bill. That assumption was, and that's what I'm most feared about, is that people are being fed this information. If they don't sell a unit, obviously they're not going to get any taxes back, because we don't tax infrastructure, do we? We only tax units. So they got to build and sell units. So that's quite frankly right now.
They tax signs something, huh?
Yeah, they do.
That's the only way we're gonna get this project in, John. Unless somebody else comes over, another investor comes in and decides to do it. But with this group, with that project, and that approval, that's the only way we're gonna get it.
When are they gonna start telling the townspeople?
That's a real good question.
When did they have it somewhere? My wife read about it.
Well, it's been in the paper, and they had a meeting with the chamber people and business people over at Wheels Motors last night. They had a presentation, but that's a very small market segment. And I keep saying, those guys, very few of those are voters. You got to get it out to the people. Not happy with it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I hope their blitz is, they've got their blitz all ready to go, because it needs to start happening.
Where's voters?
Sometimes you want to present to 2, 3, 4 small
Yeah.
groups, refine your presentation, and then we would do it.
Todd and I went to the presentation, participated in the presentation to the Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. And that was fine. They were just going, well, this is great that you let them know, but you need to get out to the people. So they had it with the business committee last night.
Get comments back though, and then refine it, and then
They go.
How many of their other
it's
business
not under
people do that?
I don't know. I'm not responsible for that one. That was the
Chamber
chamber.
after hours, so it's chamber members that go. But I think it was open to the public, I
It
think.
was. Whether, how much advertising was done to get the business people in there, I don't know.
Probably about 50, 60 people.
How many?
50 or 60.
50 or 60, that's a start.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
No, okay, how about CFP, is that done, that yet?
No, I'm working on that right now, officially.
Okay, wait, there was a motion.
Give me a second. I'll second it.
Mike,
Okay, got a motion for
Well,
second. to adjourn.
bring that up under your discussion, Marty, don't you cut people off.
Any further discussion?
yeah. What about, I'd like to find out what's going on, you know?
Okay. Okay, there may be other things
That's why
that the planner wants to bring up, I agree with you.
What about the, project over where the, wind chime places, have they ever come back yet with that one?
Winch?
The health place, the wellness center.
Yeah, the wellness center.
They haven't come back. Yeah,
They used to make wind chimes there.
It's the chiropractic, it's the wellness center and the chiropractic facility. They have all the information, and they have done their determination that they're out of the floodplain, but they have to do some site design work.
Will this new floodplain change any of this?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Motion never gets seconded.
Yeah.
We had discussion.
Mom said-
I second.
Marty's
Any
discussion.
further discussion?
Okay, I'll re-second it.
Okay. Any further?
Motion and a second.
Motion and second. For discussion purposes, Deb, are you done with your planner's report?
I guess so.
Well, look, we're supposed to be out of here at 9 o'clock, it's already 9:40.
When have we ever been out here at 9 o'clock?
I'm
Sharon
trying,
is
I'm
saying
trying.
today.
Like what John does when he's trying to leave the house. You know, he says 9 o'clock, so his hopes will be out by 9:30.
We have it. Seriously, do you have other business?
No, I'm good.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor? All opposed? That opposed.
No, trust me, I want to go home. I desperately want to go home. I need sleep.
Yeah.
I don't have the day off. I'm not here tomorrow, but I don't have the day off. I'm working tomorrow, but I'm working at home, so I maybe get something done. Okay, good point. Thank you.